All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. And this, of course, has got to do with the elections that are underway in Japan, where voting is presently underway in what is being dubbed as a huge test for the incumbent Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. It remains to be seen if the newly appointed Prime Minister can actually even retain power, or whether Kishida becomes yet another short-term Prime Minister. This is a litmus test for Fumio Kishida and also the Liberal Democrat Party. Opinion polls suggest that the Democrat Party may lose its majority in the lower house for the very first time in over a decade. The voter turnout is going to be extremely crucial amidst the discontent that the people in Japan are experiencing. A high turnout might dim the chances of the party getting a majority. The new Prime Minister took charge. It was perceived as a bit of a damage control move over Japan's decision to hold the Tokyo Games amidst a raging pandemic, which led to a huge amount of public discontent. Fumio Kishida was tasked with reviving a dwindling economy. He also pitched the concept of new capitalism for the world's third largest economy. A 15-member panel, of which 7 are women, was convened to implement the idea, naming members ranging from AI entrepreneurs to heads of labor organizations. New capitalism is an idea where smaller and larger corporations coexist and also grow side by side. Now, the panel is led by Kishida himself. Interestingly, the party had omitted some of the recommendations from its manifesto.
賃金という形で家計に戻すっていったことに失敗したっていうのがアベノミクスだと思ってます。で、その大きな理由はやはり終身雇用制の下でやっぱり企業経営者の方、これだけ環境が大きく変わる中で、今年入った新入社員を65歳、70歳まで面倒見なくちゃいけないっていう、そういう中で簡単に固定費用となる賃金の引き上げはできなかったと、そういうことだと思っています。
Now, Kishida has promised to address important issues such as the focus on defense and environment. He's also expected to make his debut on the world stage in Glasgow Climate Summit, where an explanation of Japan's action plan to reduce carbon emissions target by 2030 and 2050 will be delivered. The newly appointed Prime Minister has also vowed to strengthen the Quad alliance. India, the United States and Australia are part of the alliance, which aims to counter China's expansionist ambitions in the Indo-Pacific region. Opinion polls suggest that an alliance with coalition partner Kumito will be enough for the party to retain power with about 261 seats. Even if the LDP were to lose the majority, the alliance will of course be challenged by a strongly unified opposition. The 5 opposition parties have fielded a single candidate in 213 out of 289 constituencies. In his final campaign, Fumio Kishida had said that this is an election that is quote-unquote to choose Japan's future. There has been opposition to Kishida's party and policies, which makes this a very close election. LDP has been accused of alleged mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Kishida has struggled to advance policies to try and help the poor while securing a big boost in military spending. The boost in defense spending, of course, has a key focus in terms of the policy that Japan intends to associate with China. All right, now to get us more updates in terms of what is happening with this election that is underway in Japan, we are joined in by our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso, who's joining us live from Tokyo for more on this story. Phoebe, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on WION. Bring us up to speed with what is happening with this election. How much of a close contest will this be, and will Fumio Kishida be able to retain his majority, or will he have to rely on his coalition partners to get over the halfway mark?
It certainly looks like the LDP will be set for a bit of a bruising during these elections, and that's for several factors that you've already touched on to a certain extent. The LDP are expected to lose seats due to widespread public frustration over the previous administration's handling of the pandemic. And indeed, in a by-election last week, we saw the LDP lose its seat in Shizuoka, which was a fairly bad omen. Then the opposition is also banding together in single-seat constituencies, they are only fielding one candidate so as to not split the voting. In that sense, they're hoping to shore up more votes. However, yes, the LDP is still predicted to remain in power, but the biggest question here is to what extent can it maintain its majority as a single party. Before these elections were called, it had 276 seats, but now it's only projecting a total of a target of 233. It will have to very much rely on its coalition partner Komeito in order to get a stable majority. It's still expected to have that stable majority and to be able to pass legislation smoothly. However, this would be very bad news for the LDP generally, and particularly for Prime Minister Kishida. He's only taken over as leader of the LDP earlier this month, and he called this election saying that he wants a strong mandate to lead. If he does not get that strong mandate, it is likely that he will become one of Japan's so-called revolving door prime ministers, in and out within a year. The turnout so far has been fairly low this morning. It has been predicted that the turnout overall, however, will be higher. Turnout in recent elections has been hovering under 55%. That's around a post-Second World War low. But if more and more people do turn out to vote today, then that will be in favour for the opposition party, and might mean that the LDP lose further seats. Voting will go on until 8 p.m, so it will be a while until we get any exit polls or an idea of exactly how the LDP has fared in these elections.
I think that of course is going to be something that we'll be watching out for, especially the voter turnout in this election. Now, Fumio Kishida called this election just 10 days after he took charge as the Prime Minister in Japan. He took charge on the 4th of October. He called for this election on the 14th of October. Now, considering what the opinion polls, of course, indicate that he may not get a majority on his own, will his style of leadership be called into question?
Absolutely, that is a major issue for Prime Minister Kishida if he does not get the majority that he was hoping for with the LDP. He already is struggling against largely a very sort of bland image. He's not someone that has the kind of charisma or rallying power to get people behind him. And already we've seen a bit of a struggle within the LDP. Kishida leads a faction that is traditionally very dovish, but within the LDP, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and also Taro Aso and other members, Amari, are very much more on the sort of right-wing, right-leaning policies. So we've seen Kishida already walk back some of his promises. He mentioned briefly that he would review capital gains tax, for example, and then said, oh, that was just one idea of how to focus on redistribution of wealth. That was after a very dramatic reaction in the markets. He's also promised to really focus on increasing the middle classes, raising wages. But one of his campaign proposals was that he would be offering extra support to families raising children. However, this was absent within the LDP manifesto. So we're seeing a struggle of power already within that. And if these elections do not go well, Kishida will find his position more and more undermined.
Absolutely, indeed. And my last question to you, Phoebe, is what is going to be Fumio Kishida's policy so far as Quad is concerned? Japan is an integral part of Quad. This is, of course, a grouping that is set to take on China, of Japan, Australia, India and the United States. What is Fumio Kishida's vision for the Quad?
Well, when Kishida was voted in as leader of the LDP earlier this month, he made it quite clear that the Quad was a priority. Of course, he had a call with President Biden of the United States, but within his first calls, he spoke with Indian Prime Minister, Australian Prime Minister, really reaching out to the Quad and looking to strengthen relations there. He's also been outspoken in his support of AUKUS, the agreement in which the US and the UK supply Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. So it seems to be very much he's focusing on that regional security. Also looking at defence more generally, he's really sitting on the fence when it comes to his policies towards China, for example. He's very much stressed that the door is open for dialogue, but that Japan must collaborate with like-minded democracies and sticks to its principles on freedom, on human rights. So it's really not entirely clear as to what direction he will be pushing pushing for. Though again, as I mentioned, there will be divides within the party, but it seems that the LDP more generally are pushing to strengthen Japan's military and maritime capabilities. There was a pledge in the LDP's manifesto that they could increase defence spending to 2% of GDP or even more, and it's been capped at 1% of GDP for many, many years. So we're definitely seeing a bigger focus on defence, and that will likely see a strengthening of relationships, or at least an attempt to strengthen relationships with the Quad.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Phoebe Amoroso, for joining us from Tokyo and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as more details, of course, emerge in the election that is presently underway in Japan today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.